What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, it looks like Monolith is ramping up once again with hires all over the place, seemingly to get Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 out possibly next year. That's what a lot of us are speculating, and we're seeing more and more hiring going on, possibly to get that done in time. So a lot of stuff to go over there. And then also Sony went ahead and announced a new attachment just like randomly for your PlayStation 4 controller, but it could actually tell us quite a bit about what they're thinking going forward for the PlayStation 5 controller. And we'll talk about all of that and more today, guys. As always, if you enjoy these videos, make sure to hit the like button. It does help out. You guys have actually been liking the videos quite a bit over the past week or so, and it has been helping out, so I do appreciate that. And if you're new here, make sure you subscribe down below so you can stay up to date on all the gaming news going on in the gaming world. And we're actually going to start today with some trademarks from Capcom, because this is always a great way to get our hopes up for something that could just be business as usual. However, some big names started to get thrown around. Now, there are a couple of bots on Twitter that will post as trademarks take place by different companies. And of course, when we see things like Dino Crisis get thrown around, we get pretty excited. That at least happened yesterday, as several of these trademarks from Capcom that included things like Power Stone, Dino Crisis, Darkstalkers, Rockman, these were all getting thrown around. And really, I looked at this, to be honest, and I just saw them doing business as usual stuff, renewing trademarks, protecting patents, whatever you got to do, right? That's usually what these companies will just kind of do going forward. But I do understand the excitement when you see Dino Crisis thrown around. And you know what? I think a remake for Capcom with Dino Crisis would probably do pretty well. And would it shock me if that happened? No, not at all. I mean, Resident Evil 2 did very well for them, right? It's actually outsold the original PlayStation copy, and most likely Resident Evil 3 will do the same thing, and we've seen a lot of buzz and excitement around that one, so I have a strong feeling Capcom is looking around at some other games that they could remake, and Dino Crisis might be one of them. Also, Borderlands 3 has now released for Google Stadia, and it looks like it's unfortunately an older build of the game, back to October 24th, so it does not have all of the latest updates or the content, and according to Gearbox, they'll be pushing that going into next year, 2020, at some point. They just say like early 2020, so they have a later build, and it is the same $60 price, and then it's also $40 if you're a pro member, but I guess right now, most of the people, unless you got a buddy pass, would be a pro member. And one of the other things that's being brought up is that it kind of mirrors what the console versions are right now when it comes to performance as well, which is still kind of head-scratching when it comes to this whole service. Because remember, one of the things that they were pushing around was that their servers are much more powerful than even the Xbox One X. Remember, they showed up on stage 10.7 teraflops. However, even Borderlands 3 seems to struggle on them when it comes to 4K resolution. 4K 60, unfortunately, does not seem to be manageable with this, but there are different settings you can change. I believe they have like a performance type mode, similar to what the consoles have. But again, the big thing here was it's very accessible to get to your games, but you're also going to see a bit of a power increase because these are more powerful. But keep in mind, I mean, we just saw the Xbox Series X that's more powerful than Google's own servers, what they were describing, but Borderlands 3 is out now, at least on Stadia, so they got something else. I would just like to see them be a bit more aggressive with their pricing and their games that they're offering for a subscription service. That's like the next big thing. They gotta lock down a subscription service, especially when they go free to play next year, because they still want to upcharge you, and I don't think 4K is enough to convince people to jump in for a subscription fee of $10 per month. Also, while we're on the topic of the Xbox Series X, Phil Spencer has been, of course, making the rounds and interviews and talking quite a bit about the system and what they hope to accomplish with it, specifically day one. This is actually what he had to say to GameSpot in an interview. We wanted to make sure we had that day one we could deliver on the compatibility promise, and so I've been playing quite a few Xbox 360 games on my Xbox Series X and Xbox One games on the Xbox Series X, and that's just to ensure that we can be there day one. And of course, we had seen tweets on Twitter by Phil Spencer saying that he just took a Scarlet, well, we now know Xbox Series X, home with him to test it out. And the idea here is, I guess they're going to have as many as possible compatible, so games, I assume all of the Xbox One games will be, but the 360 games are going to be the question. I don't think it's going to be the entire library of 360 games. I think it's going to be whatever currently works for the Xbox One. Same goes for the original Xbox, which is still a pretty healthy library, and I'll be curious to see if we have any other performance gains out of it just from the fact that it's moving over to like an SSD and all of that. It'll be an interesting thing to kind of see, to look back on, and we're about to play original Xbox games from the early 2000s on what would be a beast of a system in 2020. And guys, some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start with this attachment that Sony has now introduced. Randomly, out of nowhere, yesterday they dropped a YouTube video online, and they also dropped a full blog post that described what they are saying is a back button, the back button attachment for your PlayStation 4 controller. And you can see it here. It actually attaches to the bottom of your controller, and if you flip it around, you have two macro buttons essentially on the back that can be programmed to basically map the different buttons on the front of your controller. So think of like the Astro, C40, and any of the other, Scuff Vantage controllers, different controllers that use the macro buttons on the back. The Switch has a few of those from third parties. The Xbox has that with their Xbox Elite controller. This one's kind of interesting in that it has an OLED screen on the back, which is really funny because out of all the controllers, the PlayStation 4 controller is the one with the least amount of battery life, and now we're attaching screens to it, although it looks like a fairly simple OLED screen, so I doubt it's going to have a massive impact on battery life. Nonetheless, I'm sure plenty of people will test it. It looks like it only really needs to be on, though, when you are mapping buttons. Otherwise, it seems to just turn off. Now, that whole thing on the back is also a button, which seems to be pressed and then allow you to start syncing up those paddles on the back to different things on the front. And I do like that it has a little screen that will basically shift through all of the buttons, because other controllers, you have to have a little bit of guesswork to make sure you're getting it right, where you press the macro, you press the right button, and then you think you're good. This just shows a full screen. Like, you're just looking right at a screen on the back. It does look a little bulky, I'll admit. However, we need to see how much it weighs just to see if it adds any extra real weight to it that's noticeable. And it is in a good spot. I've talked about that before. That middle back spot, for the most part, is clear of us touching it or anything. So it should be, I think, at least in a spot that's not gonna like mess with us when we're playing the games. Now, this attachment will go for $29.99 and will be out January 23rd, 2020. So not too much longer, a little over a month now. You'll be able to pick it up. I'm gonna grab one because I'm very curious about this thing as an attachment for the PlayStation 4 controller. And it really makes me wonder going forward, especially going into the PlayStation 5. I mean, think about this. We've seen supposedly with a dev kit leak, the picture, we saw like a PlayStation 5 controller up there, we believe anyway, and we can't see the back of it. I do wonder if one of the features for that controller is that they're just going to have some sort of macro buttons on the back of the controller, especially since we're seeing them explored a bit more from a first-party perspective here, because this is Sony creating this accessory. They're not going to like PowerA or anyone else to help them work on this like PDP. This is straight up Sony doing it, it seems, and that makes me wonder if that's an idea they already have for the PlayStation 5 controller, and they figure, hey, we have a ton of PS4 controllers out there right now with all these systems, might as well make an attachment for 30 bucks and cash in on that as well. It's also, for a lot of people, they're gonna look at this and say this is much better than them releasing a premium, like Elite style controller to sell you on the macro buttons, and to a degree, I do agree with you on that. I would like to see Sony attempt their own Elite style controller, though. I much prefer first-party controllers over third-party if I can get them. Like the Xbox Elite controller, that's probably the best Xbox controller you can get for your system, for your Xbox, and it's from Microsoft. Same with the Switch Pro controller for the most part, we all agree on that. So I would like to see Sony attempt that because, I mean, their stuff is quality that they put out, and some of the third-party stuff is sketchy, mediocre. It's definitely touch and go on that, but I at least like the idea. I think it's neat, and I'll check it out when it comes out next month. Next up, let's talk about Horizon Zero Dawn and a couple of other games moving to PC. Kind of. Do you remember how there was that rumor kind of floating around about Horizon Zero Dawn possibly going to PC from Sony? Of course, we see Death Stranding going to PC, but we've known about that for a while. It was outlined a long time ago, like 2015 or something, I think, from Kojima himself when they were discussing the plans for this project going forward. It's on the Decima engine, so of course that kind of gets the gears and the wheels spinning on, oh, does that mean that other Decima engine games could go to PC? I mean, anything's really possible nowadays, especially when we see all of this crazy stuff going on between the companies kind of working together all over the place now. I mean, crossplay was something that was like a pipe dream, you know, like 10 years ago or 5 years ago or whatever. And now we see it happening all over the place. So I guess you never know necessarily. I mean, MLB The Show is going everywhere at this point, so who knows? Anyway, it is technically coming to PC, but it's coming to PC through PlayStation Now. So you'll be able to stream it. You just have to have been subscribed to the PlayStation Now service. So starting January 2nd of next year, so not too long, about 3 weeks from now, PlayStation Now subscribers can enjoy Horizon Zero Dawn, Uncharted Lost Legacy, and Overcooked 2. Those will be available to stream all the way through the first week of April. That'll be April 7th, 2020. They've been kind of doing this where they throw some games in and then they pull them out after so many months most times. Like God of War, I think, is going to be up sometime in 2020. And I think this is a good idea for PlayStation Now in general. I like that they're taking some of their back catalog and cycling them through. I think PlayStation Now still kind of has it still kind of has a bad look to it because before they were charging a ton of money and was just streaming. A lot of people still don't know that you can download the games and play them locally on your PlayStation 4 system, not on PC. That we haven't got to that point yet. I mean, again, you never know, but if you have this service, it is kind of like a Game Pass. It just doesn't have all of the games from Sony first, like day and date for first party. So when a game comes out like Ghost of Tsushima, it necessarily won't be there. That's still Microsoft's thing with Game Pass, where they're putting games there day and date when they release. But I guess if there's a large back catalog of games you see on Sony's side that you would like to try, and then a bunch of third parties, because they do have a lot of games there, hey, you know what? PlayStation Now is definitely worth looking into, especially at its new pricing. Next up, let's talk about Monolith Soft hiring what seems to be a bunch of people still going forward for a game in the Legend of Zelda series. I wonder which game that is. Now, of course, Monolith Soft helped out with Breath of the Wild, the first one, specifically the world and some character building and other parts, basically running support to help get it done. I mean, if you look at Breath of the Wild, it's a very ambitious project, so naturally they call in Monolith, which makes sense because they're very good at that, to help get it done alongside of internal studios in Nintendo. Well, Japanese Nintendo, as you're seeing here, spotted several bits of recruitment pages that talk about quite a few job listings and positions, which include technical artists, programmers, planners, designers, and management support. They're also looking for freelancers, which include character modeler, concept art designer, scenario planner, and map modeler. So it almost, to me anyway, looks like they're just pulling in more people to try to get this done faster, especially when you look at freelancers. They're like, oh, well, we need more people to get this done. I think that Breath of the Wild 2 is a 2020 holiday game. I've been talking to more and more people, and that seems to be kind of the consensus right now, is that a lot of us are believing that Breath of the Wild 2 is going to make that strong push into that holiday season next year. So, I mean, by the time we come up next year, we'll probably already been playing Breath of the Wild 2. Most likely. I mean, if you consider when the first Breath of the Wild came out at the beginning of March 2017, that would actually give us about 3.5 years, maybe a little more. And if it's still using similar map, it might not be the exact same map. They'll probably have plenty of new places, but if it's the same engine that they have fixed up, and I think at this point, 3.5 to almost 4 years is enough to get that done, especially when you have Monolith helping out and are very good at this kind of stuff, and all of the positions they're hiring for a Legend of Zelda project, which is Breath of the Wild 2. It all kind of fits together, but we'll see, because if it is coming holiday 2020, we should expect to see it in a January Direct, maybe early February Direct if they go that long. However, I think Nintendo will want to jump on this whole thing as early as possible. And that's one of the reasons I also think we're getting a Direct in about 3 to 4 weeks. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about an odd situation that's taken place, and I want to bring it up just in case. It's something to look for. However, it's not going to affect most of us. Most of us will never run into this issue, but it is something to consider going forward, specifically when you buy an SD card for your Switch. Of course, over Black Friday, Cyber Monday weekend, there were a ton of deals. I think Best Buy was marking these things down to like $20 or something for like a 128 gig or a 250 gig. It was madness. Even that 1 terabyte SD card that was hugely expensive got down to $200. Yes, that's still expensive, but it was like $500 or something crazy. However, the person who actually ordered this posted on Reddit that it literally caught on fire basically in their Switch when they dropped it in. Check this out. Here's actually a picture from that Reddit post from a user named Nefarious Zen. Now, I do want to stress here, this is unconfirmed technically. However, they do have a Switch that appears to have been burned in a spot where the SD card be, and they have the SD card directly next to it. They say the Switch was off. It is required to be off when installing an SD card. When I turned it on, it didn't even show the Switch logo. I soon smelt what could only be described as burnt transistors and melting plastic. Flipped it back around, touched the slot, and went into panic mode, popped it back out, and you can see a large spot just kind of burned through. Now, this has happened a couple of times before. I've seen this like one or two times, not in person. I've actually never seen this happen in person, but online. I do remember there was a case with the Raspberry Pi couple of years ago that I remember coming across online when I was doing some work with the Raspberry Pi where they said that their SD card had shorted out. If you flip your SD card around, there are 2 longer traces. You'll have a power to ground. It's very possible that that SD card that they picked up just did not play nice with the Switch. It could have been faulty. The Switch, because they say they had not popped one in before, also could have been faulty. But it is a very, very weird instance here. This is not something that is normal at all, so don't think that. But hey, when you pop your SD card in, I guess make sure you're looking at it the whole time in case you see smoke or something, but most likely it's not going to happen. The fact that this is the first time we've heard of this and there are how many Switches out there, and yeah, I don't think this is something that will happen to you, but it's something to just keep in mind overall, I guess. And also there's a chance that this could also be a hoax, but I will admit it looks pretty straightforward, and they've already contacted Nintendo, who's told them to just send the Switch in and they'll get it replaced, even though it's out of warranty. So Nintendo coming through with the customer service at least. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Interiaco saying Microsoft is going to the phone naming direction with its consoles. You know, like Samsung has the S series, A series, etc. Xbox One X right now is the top Xbox One. Same for the next Xbox. And I thought about this. If their brand is their straight up name, so it's just Xbox, yes, there's Series X and there could be Series A, there could be Series B. We think Series S is the next one. I do wonder if going forward, if they'll change it up some, or if it literally will just always be Series and that's it, like Xbox Series something. Do they go like double X? They can't go triple X. If they go triple X, they're gonna be in trouble. It's gonna be a hard time putting it on Walmart shelves. But I do wonder how they're going to tackle that naming scheme in 10 years, we'll say, right? When the next systems are out. That'll be the thing to see. But you're right. They have set themselves up right now to be more in line with what you would see with a phone. We just saw the Apple Watch Series 5 I saw posted on Twitter. And I thought about that and I said, oh, okay, well, that's where Xbox came up with this. However, there is the previous one was like the Series 4, right? And then the Series 3. They don't have like an Apple Watch 1X or something, or 1S behind it. That's where the naming is weird. Like I said before, Microsoft just needs to move on from those older systems as soon as they can, get the Xbox One S out of there, get the X out of there, and just leave Xbox Series X, Series S, Series A, whatever. Just leave those. I'll be curious if they try Series L. That would be pretty funny. I don't think you can put an L on the console, but Microsoft might try. Who knows? Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here from Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit the like button. Really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything talked about here today, whether it's Monolith Soft, apparently hiring quite a few people in to work on the Zelda project, which Breath of the Wild 2, obviously. What do you think about that? And when do you think Breath of the Wild 2 is coming? Do you think that is a 2020 holiday release? Do you think it's earlier? Or do you think it's going to fall into 2021? Let me know about that, guys, down below. Or what about that attachment for the PlayStation 4 controller that are basically macro buttons on the back? You think that's a clever idea from Sony? And do you think maybe that gives us a little bit of foreshadowing towards that PlayStation 5 controller and some of the ideas they have there? Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.